My girlfriend looked at me across the table. The restaurant was quiet. Low lights, soft music playing in the background. It should have been a normal night, but something in her expression felt different. Cold, distant, like she had already made a decision before I even sat down. She put her glass on the table slowly, then she said it. "You're not good enough." Just like that. No hesitation, no emotion. I remember staring at her for a few seconds, trying to understand if I had heard it wrong. But I hadn't. And in that moment, something inside me changed, because that wasn't just an insult. It was the moment I realized I had been living the wrong life. My name is Lucas Bennett. I'm 29 years old now, but the story I'm about to tell happened when I was 24. Back then, I thought I had everything figured out. I had a stable job, a decent apartment, and a relationship that, from the outside, looked perfect. Her name was Emily Carter. We met during my last year of college. She was confident, ambitious, the kind of person who always seemed to know exactly what she wanted, and for a long time, I admired that about her. While I was more quiet, more analytical, the kind of person who preferred building things slowly instead of chasing attention. At first, our differences seemed to balance each other. She pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I helped her slow down when she needed to think things through. At least, that's what I believed. But over time, small things started to change. Comments that sounded like jokes at first. "You could try harder." "You're too comfortable." "You don't think big enough." I laughed them off in the beginning, because relationships have teasing, right? That's normal. But those comments didn't stop. They evolved. They became more direct, more frequent, more personal, and slowly. What used to feel like encouragement started to feel like criticism. Constant criticism. The kind that doesn't break you all at once, but wears you down little by little. Until one day, you don't even recognize yourself anymore. Looking back now, I can see exactly when everything started to fall apart. It wasn't one big moment. It was a series of small ones. Conversations that didn't feel right, silences that felt too long, and a growing feeling that no matter what I did, it was never enough. But I ignored all of it, because I thought that's what commitment looked like. You stay. You try harder. You prove yourself. What I didn't understand back then was that some people don't want you to improve. They want you to feel small, because it makes them feel bigger. And the night she looked at me and said, "You're not good enough," that was the moment everything finally became clear. At the beginning, everything felt easy. Emily was the kind of person who made life feel exciting. She always had plans, always had goals, always knew where she wanted to go next. And for a while, I felt lucky to be part of that world. We went out often, met new people, talked about the future like it was something already guaranteed. But slowly, the tone started to change. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. It started with small comments, things that sounded harmless at first. "You're too quiet in conversations." "You should be more confident." "You don't stand out enough." At first, I agreed with her. I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I could improve. So I started trying. I spoke more in social situations. I pushed myself to be more outgoing. I started dressing differently, working longer hours, trying to grow faster in my career. But every time I improved something, the standard changed. It was never enough. If I became more confident, she would say I lacked ambition. If I worked harder, she would say I wasn't thinking big enough. If I talked about future plans, she would say I was still playing it safe. It felt like chasing a moving target. No matter how much I adjusted, I was always behind. And over time, I stopped doing those things for myself. I started doing them for her approval. That was the real shift. I didn't notice it immediately, but I started measuring my worth based on her reactions. If she seemed satisfied, I felt good. If she criticized something, I felt like I'd failed. And the worst part was, she didn't always criticize directly. Sometimes it was the silence, the look, the slight disappointment in her expression. That was enough, because it made me question everything. I started overthinking simple things, the way I spoke, the way I dressed, the decisions I made at work, even the way I relaxed. It felt like I was constantly being evaluated, not as a partner, but as a project. And projects are meant to be improved or replaced. Looking back now, I can see exactly what was happening. She wasn't building me up. She was slowly breaking my confidence. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, consistent way that's much harder to notice. Until one day, you realize you don't trust yourself anymore, and that's exactly where I was when everything reached its breaking point. The moment things became impossible to ignore happened at a dinner party. It was hosted by one of Emily's friends from work, a small gathering, about 10 people. Most of them worked in finance or marketing, high energy, confident, the kind of people who spoke loudly about their achievements. Emily loved that environment. She fit perfectly into it. I didn't. But I still went, because I knew it mattered to her. At the beginning of the night, everything felt normal. People were talking, laughing, sharing stories. I stayed mostly quiet, listening, occasionally joining the conversation when I had something to add. Then someone asked me what I did for a living. I explained my job, systems analysis, optimization, building internal tools for companies. One of the guys nodded politely. Another one asked a few questions. The conversation was fine, nothing awkward, nothing uncomfortable, until Emily decided to speak. She laughed lightly and waved her hand. "He's being modest," she said. I smiled slightly, thinking she was going to support me. But then she continued, "He's good at what he does, but he doesn't think big." The table went quiet for a second. Not completely silent, but enough for everyone to notice. Someone gave a small, awkward laugh. Another person took a sip of their drink and looked away. I felt that familiar pressure in my chest. The same feeling I had started getting more often around her. I tried to brush it off. I even forced a small smile, but she didn't stop there. "He's comfortable," she added. "Too comfortable." That word stayed in the air longer than it should have. Comfortable. In that room, it didn't sound like a compliment. It sounded like a flaw. I didn't say anything. I just nodded slightly and let the conversation move on. But something inside me didn't move on. It stayed there, stuck. Because for the first time, she didn't just criticize me in private. She did it in front of other people. And the worst part wasn't what she said. It was how easily she said it, like it was obvious, like everyone should agree. On the way home that night, the car was quiet. No music, no conversation, just the sound of the road. I thought about bringing it up, asking her why she said that, but I already knew what the answer would be. "You're overthinking. It was just a joke. You're too sensitive." So I didn't say anything. I just stared out the window. And for the first time, I started asking myself a question I had been avoiding for months. Why am I still here? A week after the dinner, Emily asked me to meet her at a restaurant. It wasn't unusual. We went out often, but something about the way she asked felt different. Short, direct, no emojis, no warmth. When I arrived, she was already sitting at the table. Perfect posture, phone placed neatly beside her glass. She didn't smile when I sat down, just nodded slightly. We ordered drinks, Made small talk for a few minutes, work, plans, random things that didn't really matter. It all felt forced, like we were both pretending everything was normal, but it wasn't. Then she put her glass down slowly, looked directly at me, and said it. "I've been thinking." That sentence alone was enough to make the air feel heavier, because I knew what was coming next. People don't start conversations like that unless something is about to change. "I don't think this is working anymore," she said. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I just listened. "I need someone who matches my level," she continued. "Someone who's more driven, more ambitious." Each word landed like it had been rehearsed, carefully chosen, clean, precise, like she had gone over this conversation in her head many times before. Then she said the sentence that stayed with me. "You're not good enough." No anger, no emotion, just a statement, simple, direct, final. For a few seconds, I didn't react, not because it didn't affect me, but because it affected me more than I expected. It wasn't just what she said. It was everything behind it. All the small comments, all the silent judgments, all the moments I ignored. They all came together in that one sentence. "You're not good enough." I could have argued. I could have listed everything I had done, everything I was building, everything I was working toward. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I understood something clearly for the first time. This was never about improvement. There was nothing I could do that would suddenly be enough. Because the goal wasn't for me to grow. The goal was for me to feel small. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. So instead of arguing, I just nodded. "Okay," I said quietly. She looked slightly surprised. Maybe she expected resistance, emotion, something. But I didn't give her that. I stood up, left some cash on the table, and walked out. Just like that. No dramatic scene, no long goodbye, no second chances. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't just walking away from the relationship. I was walking away from the version of myself that stayed too long. After that night, I didn't try to fix anything. I didn't call her. I didn't send a message. I didn't check her social media. I simply disappeared. Not in a dramatic way, not to prove a point, but because I finally understood something. If someone sees you as not enough, nothing you do will ever change that. So instead of trying to change her mind, I changed my environment. The first thing I did was delete distractions, apps, notifications, conversations that didn't add anything to my life. Silence became part of my routine, and in that silence, I started thinking clearly again. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't measuring myself against someone else's expectations. I was just building, slowly, quietly. I started focusing more on my work, not the way I used to. Before, I worked to prove something. Now, I worked to create something. I took on projects I had been postponing. Ideas I thought were too risky. Things I never tried because I was too busy trying to be enough for someone else. Weeks passed, then months. My routine became simple. Work, learn, improve, repeat. No noise, no validation, no pressure to perform for anyone. And something interesting started to happen. The more I focused on myself, the less I thought about her. At first, she crossed my mind every day, then every few days, then once a week, until eventually, she became just a memory. Not a painful one, just a lesson. Meanwhile, my life started moving in a completely different direction. Opportunities I hadn't seen before started appearing. Projects turned into results. Results turned into growth. And that growth wasn't loud. It didn't happen overnight, but it was real. The kind of growth no one notices at first, until one day, they do. Almost a year passed. My life looked completely different. Not perfect, but stable, focused, quietly moving forward. The projects I started had grown into something bigger than I expected. Clients, consistent income, new opportunities opening one after another. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. Then one night, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Emily. For a second, I just stared at the screen, not shocked, not emotional, just observing, like looking at something from a different life. I didn't answer immediately. I let it ring. Then it stopped. A message appeared a few seconds later. "Hey, I've been thinking about you." I read it once, then again. The same person who once looked at me and said, "You're not good enough," was now reaching out like nothing had happened. I didn't reply, not right away. A few minutes later, another message came in. "I saw what you're doing now. It's impressive." That sentence almost made me laugh, because it confirmed something I had already learned. People don't always recognize your value when you're building it. They recognize it when it's visible, when it's undeniable, when it benefits them. I put my phone down and thought about it for a moment. Not about her, but about who I used to be. The version of me that would have replied instantly. The version of me that would have felt validated by that message. That version of me didn't exist anymore. So when I finally picked up my phone again, my response was simple. "I hope you're doing well." Nothing more, no questions, no reopening the past, no invitation to continue the conversation. She replied a few minutes later. "That's it?" I didn't answer, because sometimes silence says everything that needs to be said, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to prove anything to her anymore. After that message, she never reached out again, and I never expected her to, because the story between us had already ended long before that night. It ended the moment I stopped needing her approval. That was the real turning point, not the breakup, not the message months later, but the moment I understood my value didn't depend on someone else's opinion. For a long time, I thought growth meant becoming what someone else expected, working harder, changing more, trying to fit into a version of myself that would finally be enough. But the truth is, that kind of growth isn't real. It's just adaptation, and adaptation can turn into quiet self-destruction if you're not careful. What actually changed my life was much simpler. I stopped trying to be enough for the wrong person and started building a life that made sense to me. That shift doesn't look dramatic from the outside. There's no big announcement, no moment where everything suddenly clicks. It happens slowly, through small decisions, choosing where to put your energy, choosing what to ignore, choosing who you listen to, and most importantly, choosing who you stop trying to impress. Looking back now, I don't feel anger toward her. I don't feel regret either, because everything she said that night led me exactly where I needed to go. "You're not good enough." At the time, it sounded like an ending, but it wasn't. It was a filter. It removed the version of me that was trying too hard to be accepted and left behind the version that was finally building something real. The night she said I wasn't good enough was the night I stopped trying to be.